Hey guys, how y'all doing? It's Zachy J, and today we're going to talk about human behavior and animal behavior. Let's examine a few little studies and let's get down to see if there's any underlying messages that we can get out of them. So, recently I was just talking to some scientists, and we're just going over some studies, as one does when one talks to scientists. And they were telling me about this one particular study that was like really fascinating, and how these mice that are walking across this floor, and this floor is electrified, and they get this stimulus, this pain stimulus, right? They get shocked, and then how do they react, right? What's interesting is where they put their attention after the pain, not from directly from the stimulus, but what they're attributing it to. So for these mice, they're often attributing it to the food they got, because that's how they're processing information, right? That's what they're focused on. What are they focused on? Because what you're focused on is what you're going to perceive. So these mice, they eat this food, they walk across this floor, they get shocked, and then all of a sudden they're just like, that must not have been good food. That shock might have happened from indigestion, or whatever the equivalent of whatever mice thought comes into their head. So that made me think. I was just like, what about humans, right? What's the equivalent for humans when they are operating in this world and they come across some phenomenological pain point that's sticking them in the foot like a thorn? What are they attributing it to, right? What are they putting their attention on? And after thinking about that, I was like, there's probably numerous times when, just like these scientists are looking at these mice and rats and like maybe laughing to themselves, like, don't they know the floor is electrified? It has nothing to do with the food, right? It's like, and they might be missing a point in their life where it's like they don't know that the way they're treating another person, say in a relationship, has nothing to do with that relationship. It has everything to do with this random pain point that happened randomly through their day. So it got me thinking about times that I do that, right? And what are times that you do that? And I'll give you an example for me, right? I know that when I'm driving and sometimes there's traffic, you're on the speakerphone with your friend, and halfway through that conversation, your friend's just like, "Are you upset at me? Are you mad at me?" You know? I'm like, "Bro, I'm not mad at you." It's like, "I'm not mad." That's like they're hearing. They're like, I'm fine, right? And but the way that the communication is coming out is, it's inflictive. It's and what do we do about that, right? And what do I do about that? Well, I noticed that because the way I was speaking to my friends, that especially when I have undergone some stress point, maybe in the middle of that conversation, I'm kind of multitasking, right? You're dealing with stress and you're talking to people. That the way it comes out is, it's not pleasant, right? It doesn't feel like a friend. It doesn't feel like good communication. So I know that if it's happening then in an obvious way, in a way that I can reflect upon, that it's happening in other unconscious ways in my life too. So what should we do about this? Well, one thing I know for certain is we got to figure out how to become aware of this stuff, right? And just becoming aware of it is defense against the dark arts. And you got to have a little bit of defense against the dark arts, because your shadow is often creeping up and nipping at your heels. And you just hope it doesn't trip you up, because, if you don't pay attention, it's got to trip you up. It's got to trip you up so you can start being reflective. It's got to trip you up so you can start being introspective, so you can actually notice that there's something that can be done. There's something that can be done to improve you, and that the universe is reaching out to grab your attention so you can elevate yourself into a higher level, so you can incorporate things that are important to you. You can incorporate yourself back into yourself, into your being, and not be separated by ignorance and be separated by fear or anger into becoming a whole different type of person. So I noticed that the more I have learned how to meditate, the more capable I have been in identifying my sticking points in communication, my sticking points in behavior, um, you know, and sometimes just my emotions, right? That's the hardest thing, is especially as if you're uh, a self-starting individual, you're an alpha type of individual that gets things done that people can rely on. You are a pillar, you of strength. You're an unmovable rock. And then you have some things inside of you which is an unstoppable force. And what is that unstoppable force? It's emotions. You have this emotional landscape that's super powerful, that's the undercurrent to our actions, that is often the driving force of our actions. I would say 99% of the times the driving force of our actions. And there's that sometimes when you can out-logic the thing. You can out-logic the thing. But for the most part, you, with the undercurrent, is taking you along. And if you don't notice where your feelings and emotions are directing you, you're at their whim. But once you notice them, they still have power, and they still have presence, and and you have the right to feel deeply. You have the right to feel about these complicated, complex nature of yourself. But you also have the free will to choose to be better. You have the free will to and choose to transmute, to create alchemy, and take those things and turn them into gold. Turn that lead shadow into gold. You can do this. And it's paramount that we all start to do this, because when we are acting unconsciously, what do you think how that reflects out into the world, right? The world starts unconsciously acting back onto you, and you start training, say, your partner who you're co-creating a beautiful relationship with. You're training them to be unconscious, because you're like, what you're actually doing is the top layer of communication is filtering this bottom layer, this bottom undercurrent. And if it's filtering all that bottom undercurrent, they are forced to contend with something that's unidentified yet. So you're bringing anomaly into a conversation, into a relationship, and you're trying to figure out actually how to. The other person wants to know what's going on. If they care about you, they want to know what's going on with you. They want to know what you think, how you feel. And if you don't know that yourself, how are you going to convey it? And instead of conveying it as adults can do, we convey it as reactions and hopes that they are able to help us sort things out. But we have the opportunity to sort ourselves out. And then when we show up, the way we show up is empowered. And the way we show up is actually attractive. And the way we show up is engaging and enriching. We want our conversations that we share with the people that we care about to be jumping off points for the rest of your wonderful, wild, adventure-filled life, and not rehashing old scenarios that are left undealt with, and doing that by delving from the murky depths of our souls, these elements of our shadows that start bubbling up to the surface. And when one of these bubbles pops, it gets messy, and then we end up spreading that mess to the people we care about. That's the people we spend time with, right? So we have an opportunity to learn from these mice, right? We have an opportunity to learn from this science that the thing that we see out there in nature is often things that are happening internally in all the different ways. So if we can be aware of this concept, start paying attention to it, it will lose power. And the more it loses power, the more you gain power. The more you gain power. And once you figure out who you are underneath all of this, that you do not have to be pulled out by the riptide of feelings and emotions, that you can be in the driver's seat, that you can be piloting consciousness. Oh boy, I can't wait for the people that understand that, because what they do, what they will do. That's going to be an adventure that everyone wants to be a part of and everyone's going to want a piece of. So thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. I appreciate it. And if you could do a solid, give me a like and subscribe, I'll be eternally grateful, and I'll be able to share my message with more people about philosophy, techniques, how to build out your consciousness, because guess what? We're all sharing consciousness together, so let's make this thing beautiful. Okay, guys? Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll talk to you real soon. Bye.